sell them for, if a property over there that's assessed at 400 is now selling well below 100,000, below the assessed value.
It's taking the tax burden and redistributing it. Well, it's not increasing the levy. It's taking the current burden that we have and trying to make that equal throughout the town.
I just don't think it's the time.
Just to ask a
When is
question
the
on
time?
that. And Judy, help me here. So just to ask a question on that. Now, you know, if in 1997, let's say 3/4 of the houses on the island, maybe not, let's say 50% of the houses haven't been reassessed, it would seem to me that, you know, there was some peak years, let's say 2005 to 2008, price-wise. I think things changed dramatically since 2008. So I would guess that in that 2000 to 2008 zone, there could be some houses that have been way overpriced. There was some bubble pricing that I think occurred then, that maybe they need to come down. And those people, if they're trying to sell their house, they may not be able to because it's way over the top. But, you know, that's probably where, you know, for instance, East River, there might be a couple of properties that fall into that category. So I'm wondering if, I mean, by evening the playing field and distributing the levy, because we're being told, well, I'm just going to talk the town tax because the school budget still needs to be approved. The county tax under Collins was not going to increase, but now Cars, I know, is proposing some changes that may result in some increases. That still remains to be seen. But let's just say the county's not going to increase, the town's only going to increase at a maximum of 2%, but and the school still needs to be decided. But if that pie remains the same, then it's just, which is the key, I think we all need to know what that number is. What's the town budget, 2011, what's it going to be in 2012, that value, and then apply that. And it can't be just $28 per, because, I mean, if we're reassessing those numbers, you know, let's just say the mean just went up 5 or 10%, the dollar per, in order for the levy to actually stay the same, I would assume it would go from $28 to...
No, we're currently at 59.
Well, no, I'm saying you're going to 100% from 46.7.
Okay.
So I would assume that, so let's just say it's 50-50. So to make it easy, it goes from 59 to 28.
Okay.
But I would think that if the average house value goes up 10%, the per thousand rate would go down by 10%, or less than 2% above what it is currently. Is that correct?
I'm not sure that that's correct, because the levy itself is going to stay the same. Each person's piece.
So that's important to know.
Each person's piece that they owe, that's what variable is. That's what can change, depending on where their market says.
So have you guys figured out what the surplus or what the value of doing this will be to maintain a tax levy at a constant rate and still provide the services that we're used to? Because that's really what it's going to come out to be. Because you're going to gain, otherwise we wouldn't spend all this money, because this has to be an amazing amount of money too to go through and
it averages $15 to $18 per parcel for this year, and then after that the price will be a maintenance charge.
So you're recouping it and the reevaluation. I mean, do you know what you're expecting to gain in total value, and then times the levy currently, what the dollars then are going to go to the town for either surplus or balancing, and how many years that might carry us?
Well, this is all in the interest of equity. As far as if the levy stays the same, no more money is coming to us. If they decide yearly on their budget, we have still a lot of building going on. So regardless of whether this gets done or not, the building that's going on adds to the assessed value of the island. Is there a surplus? I can't answer that.
How's the company that's doing the reassessment being paid?
How are they being paid? Probably, how are they being paid?
They get a percentage, and they get a percentage?
They get $15 to $18 per parcel.
So it's in their best interest that they have it on.
No,
no, it's a flat rate. They're going to get a flat rate. And And actually, we're kind of small potatoes, so we'll send it out, the request out to multiple companies and see what we get back. And then there'll be, of course, more education with the contractor. They'll be having more meetings, just like what we're doing right now. Yes, ma'am?
So do you think that people who purchased a house, say like in the past 5 years, their taxes may go down, whereas people who own for 20 or 30 years?
The people who are in their homes for the 20 or 30 years, I believe, and I've not been through this yet myself, just following the model that the state gives us and talking to other assessors in other towns, those are the assessed values that are going to see the increases, because they've not been reviewed, they've not been looked at. What happens now when a property sells is we do the math on every single property that comes across our desk, and depending on where the ratio falls, it gets reviewed. But I would be honest with you, we're at 46.5, and if a property comes in at 35%, I don't put it at 46.5 because it's a big jump. Keep it at 39, at 40. If it was at 100%, there's no argument. There it is. Everybody's paying their fair share. Some people, yes, their tax bill may go up a few $100s, but it's not more money. It's just redistributing the burden that we already have.
Judy, so a question, because I'm just trying to further define the word levy, because that is relevant to the cap tax too.
Okay.
So in terms of levy, let's say we're at $59 right now, which we are. So that's the levy that can't go up by 2%.
That's my understanding.
Right. So now, that's also how the town collects whatever it is, $6, let's say, per house, I think is what you told me.
Yeah, $6
So for that, let's say they are doing 6. Now, we're going to go to 100%, and for the ease of math, we're going to say it's at 50%, now it's going to be at 100%, so it goes from $6 to $3. But if the average house across the island that's being assessed goes up, you know, let's say it's at 100,000 today and it's 120 at the end of this, so it went up 20%. If you leave that as a constant, that would mean there's a 20% increase in revenue for the town. Is that going to result in a drop in that revenue? Or
It's
in
not a
that
20%
number?
increase in the revenue for the town, because the revenue for the town equals the levy.
Okay, but let me ask you, so right now, I'm understanding the levy is $6 per 1,000.
Okay.
And for these and that, let's just say it's at 50% value for assessment. So if it goes from 50 to 100, it would go from $6 to $3. So just for apples and apples. But then if the average house across the island, overall, across the island, I would agree that if we do a reassessment, if before the assessment, the average household was worth $100,000, and after the assessment, the average house was $100,000, with obviously a big range, but the average house, then it would stay at $3, I would assume. But if that goes up 10, let's say there's a 10% increase of overall average houses value on the island, that'd be a 10% increase in revenue if that levy is not adjusted downward. But if the levy is adjusted downward to compensate for that average house value, then I would say there's been no increase.
But it's not a constant, every house is not going to go up.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the average, so right now, the average house, let's just say, is $100,000. And the range could be, there could be a $1 million house and a $40,000 house. And let's say that $40,000 house hasn't been reassessed in, however long. That's irrelevant. It's just, what is the average house worth today? And if the average house across the island is $100,000, that means if there's 15,000 houses times 100,000 times 6, that's the current revenue that the town receives. That's the levy, $6 per 100,000 per 1,000. So now if the average value of the houses across the entire island for 15,000 houses, and not knowing how many there really is, goes to 120,000, that's a 20% increase in the average house value. That would be also, if it remains constant, a 20% increase in that, in the revenue coming in, if that is not adjusted accordingly.
Mike, you're confusing this unnecessarily.
Okay, go ahead.
The town approves a budget and they back into the millage rate based on the assessed valuation that's out there. So if we go to 100% valuation from 46.5, the rate drops to 28. On your example, if all of a sudden we find out that everything is worth, the whole assessed valuation of the island is 10% more, the millage rate drops 10% more. The school district is different. They tell you we're voting on this dollars, but you're voting on a millage over there. So if the total valuation comes in 10% higher for some reason, they're gonna have 10% more of your money to play with.
So that's going to be important to know in May. That's the May vote, not to be confused with the capital appropriation request vote in this year.
And the big issue with this stuff is the gains that are, theoretically, there should be no difference. If everybody's house went up by the same percentage, down the same percentage, everybody wind up paying the same fraction of the total. But the games that are played with the changes in millage, they will talk about 10% increases in budgets, 3% increases, and then they'll talk about changes in and millage rates and this and that, and they'll go back and forth to make it look better. And the games that are played, I have yet to see a situation where you don't wind up paying more than you thought you were going to pay. And that's the issue, and that's not something that's a function of this.
Trudy, can you confirm that the town is not looking for additional funding? They just want to revalue the property to collect the same amount of tax they need for the current, for the proposed budget?
Whatever the proposed budget is.
Confirm what
Yes.
Jim just told you.
Yes.
I can say
They'd
that
like more money, but
if some of the houses had not been assessed since '97, there are people carrying a larger load of the burden. So I
Which is
think
the
it
whole
makes
purpose
sense that
behind
a
it.
frequent reassessment should be provided, but I mean, what you said about the school budget, that scares the heck out of me.
Well,
That's-
it is.
Yeah, school's a different animal.
School's different, but let me give you an example here.